All right, well, let's rock and roll, as they say. Where
Okay. Yo, it's Ethan McKinley's Questionable. Hit the music. Ba, 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 ba. Okay, here we go, Mike. We are with Mark Ebner, the amazing award-winning investigative journalist. He's authored many books, including Poison Candy, Hollywood Interrupted, and that's also the moniker of your website, isn't it, Mark? When you kind of detail the sleaze and crime and the seedy underbelly of Hollywood and things mainly. You've written for BREITBART, Rolling Stone, Salon, Spy, The Drudge Report. You're a far more accomplished man than me.
Get a few more years under your belt, you'll be right there. But don't go to the Guardian, though. I just read today, I think they're getting gutted over there. Journalism is dying all over the world.
Well, I think that's one of the central conceits of your work. What attracted me to your work and stuff was when I caught you on the internet. This is why I'm discovering all these new people through like Tony and stuff. You've got this kind of like hound dogged determination to kind of get a story. You don't care what people think of you. I think that's a rare thing in investigative journalism and in journalism, is it not?
Yeah, well, my goal is to stay ahead of the story, and I've done pretty well so far. If you don't mind me bragging, yeah, I was I was on the ground with Scientology back before anyone dared, even dared to be critical of them. Who knew that America's dad, Bill Cosby, was going to become known as a serial rapist, right?
Yeah.
I knew back in 2006, but nobody listened to me.
Well, you reported the story in 2007, right? And then you got sidelined or blackballed. No one was interested. Now it's all kind of coming out now.
Blackballed by everyone, including my own agent. I had to fire my agent because I floated. I swear to God, this is what happened. I was with one of the big ones, William Morris Endeavor Agency.
Yeah.
And I had a top book, coming off a New York Times bestseller with Hollywood Interrupted. I thought, hey, I'm in like Flynn here. I got the top agent at William Morris. Well, anyway,
you'll be the Tom Cruise of journalism, kind of.
Well, after the dust settled on that first book with Breitbart, Hollywood Interrupted, I was thinking of things that I wanted to do books on, and I said, well, Cosby's a rapist, so that would be a good story. Basically.
How did you pick that up? Because like Hannibal Buress recently has been doing like stories and like in his act about Cosby. That's how this kind of broke again to a new level. Well, right. you predate Hannibal, right?
Well,
how did you find out?
Hannibal Buress stepped in shit with that off-the-cuff joke he made on stage somewhere. He was playing a club. And so he was riffing on Bill Cosby, don't tell black folk to pull up their pants. Because Bill, you're a rapist. I mean, that was the essence of.
Well, Eddie Murphy, like other comedians, Chris Rock, Eddie Murphy have done stuff on Cosby, saying he's holier than thou, and he tells you what to do, and you need to be an upstanding black man, not just a comedian, but a black person. You're representative of all of us, and then he's actually just, I guess, essentially the worst one. Like Shakespeare would say, "Methinks the lady doth protest too much."
Exactly.
So, how did you come across the story?
Well, what happened was a colleague of mine, I've never mentioned his name, and I don't burn my sources. That's, will speak to my longevity in this, in the game. But he said, listen, I know a woman who has been claiming to me for years that Bill Cosby drugged and raped her. And I said, well, I'd like to meet her. A couple of months later, she lives in upstate New York, 3,000 miles from LA.
Sure.
She came out, sat down. I had dinner with this woman, and I listened to her story, and I was amazed. But at the same time, I'm sitting here listening to one lady I don't know. So what I did was I found another source. And, this woman was a lawyer, not of the greatest reputation, but not a bad woman either. Tamara Green.
Sure.
coincidentally, she was married to the screenwriter Waylon Green, but that's just a little anecdote. Anyway, I drove up on my own dime, up the coast of California to meet her. She told this exact same story, my friend, and I was like, these two women don't know each other. Yeah. It is impossible that they know each other because they live clear across the country from each other. They were never really in the same circles or anything else like that. And I said, wow, these stories line up. Now I've got two sources. Now I'm a journalist, okay?
Just to jump in and play devil's advocate, Mark, sorry to interrupt, but couldn't you name any Hollywood actor that's got two disgruntled women attached to a story that are kind of perhaps slept with a famous actor and then got rejected because they thought it was going to turn into something and it didn't, and after the fact they can kind of remove consent, which is a big thing in the news right now.
Yeah. Well, that can happen, and it does happen all the time. Yeah. But my gut and everything, everything about meeting these two women independently told me that they weren't lying.
Well, he was America's dad, wasn't he, in the Cosby show?
So now I've got a situation where I've got two sources. I want to round it out a little bit. So there was a woman, and this is what has all sort of evolved into a criminal trial for Cosby upcoming. Sure. Is the woman from his alma mater, Temple University. This woman, her name is escaping me at the moment, and it shouldn't. But anyway, I couldn't speak to her.
Is it Joan Tarsin?
No. Joan Tarshish was the first woman.
That's it.
I met. Tamara Green was the second, and then, oh my God.
Well, you've got Janice Dickinson, you've got Paige Young, a Playboy girl from the 70s. They used to get passed around at the mansion, right? She was found dead and carried out of a room or committed suicide, right?
Yeah, and by the way, speaking of Paige Young, I'll tell you, I'll give you a little anecdote now that we're riffing on Cosby here, that I haven't broken anywhere. It's all yours, Ethan, okay? You ready for this?
We've gone exclusive.
Okay. Well, there was an actor, real big in the 70s, and I'm not going to reveal him right at the top, but he had he was a frequent presence at the Playboy Mansion.
Sure.
And I was absolutely sure, given the time frame of where these incidents seem to happen like every other day with Bill Cosby, all roads lead back to Sodom and Gomorrah. All roads lead back to the Playboy Mansion. And I knew this because, when I started putting things together in my head, I was like, well, Hugh Hefner has his own in-house Dr. Feelgood.
Sure.
Guy subscribing drugs all the time. Quaaludes were popular in the 70s. I know that. How old are you?
I'm 40.
Yeah. Now, okay. Quaaludes were do you remember them?
No, I was born in 75. I mean, I heard them mentioned in movies and stuff, but I guess because I grew up in the 80s, you'd hear Coke and stuff in Miami Vice and Scarface, and then obviously in England you get into kind of the acid house culture. It becomes like acid and then ecstasy, MDMA and stuff. But not Quaaludes. No, that's more of an American 70s thing, I think.
Okay, well, methaqualone or methaqualone, I think it is the ingredient in it. The word around the Playboy Mansion and in certain circles was that these were called thigh openers. If you wanted to score, slip her a Quaalude and that's it. She's going to be like jelly in your hands.
It's like the 70s equivalent of, I guess, a roofie, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Except it didn't quite knock you out, but it just made you completely, floppy, for lack of a better
susceptible
word.
Susceptible to suggestion, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So to get to the point about this, because I'm tired of him not returning my queries on this. This actor, 70s actor, was quoted in front of a source of mine and 5 other people saying, around the Playboy Mansion, it was like he remembered a specific incident where they dragged a comatose playmate out of her room at the mansion.
Right.
And she had just been with Cosby. Now, I don't know if that was Paige Young, but that's an interesting mystery, and that's one rabbit hole I want to find out about. The actor who said this. Now, I feel comfortable revealing who allegedly was, because I've reached out to him and he never responded.
Well, this
So
is
I've
why
done
this is why Mark is on the show, folks, because he pulls no punches. That's why I like you.
Well, I did reach out to him. He didn't respond. I've done my diligence. That actor is James Caan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I mean, here you got a situation. It's like right out of a different era. It's like the 70s, and Quaaludes were flying, and
he's in Rollerball and The Godfather. He's top of the tree. He's on fire.
Sure, and all kinds of social lubricants, are being passed around the mansion. So I was like, God, this guy was being Cosby was. Now I'm looking at it, and I'm like, this is really, I may well be looking at the most prolific serial rapist of all time. And so I put my story together. Back to the agent issue that I was telling you about, the William Morris agent. I floated it by her. I said, I got to do a book on this guy, because where there's smoke, there's fire. And I found two, and I've got a third source, being the woman in Canada whose name still escapes me. I should not wake and bake on a Saturday. I mean, I'd have this at the tip of my tongue, but whatever. Anyway, the situation was where my agent responded to me, yelling at me. She was like, Ebner, do you realize how many years Mr. Cosby has been a client at William Morris?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't give a fuck. It was almost like, I was pre-echoing Hannibal. I was like, yeah, but he's a rapist, and here's my agent, a woman who was part of this, part of the infinite layers of protection back in 2006 when I started reporting this.
Well, that's the problem. It's that kind of like, it's a diffusion of responsibility, isn't it? It's so far removed, and there's so many kind of people and like in between Cosby and you and things. It's more about the business than anything, really.
Right, and people call me naive because when I make this stuff public and I say, for Christ's sakes, even my own agent, won't protect me, won't back me, won't let me do. I said, something's wrong. And they were like, of course, it's Hollywood, Ebner. This has been your beat for, coming up on 3 decades now.
Yeah.
You should know better. You should expect this. But every once in a while, I expect a shred of humanity to surface, and, people will allow me to do the right thing. So, yeah, I mean, Cosby, that's, it's still up on my website. No issue, no correction, mind you.
Has no one picked up the story and credited you for that, though, as you kind of were there first? Have you not been asked to kind of testify or been given credit at all for kind of breaking this story first and foremost, like 10 years ago?
Well, I certainly I got the credit because finally the Daily Beast. Are you familiar with that website?
Yeah.
Okay, it was, thedailybeast.com. They said, Ebner, we want to revisit this. I said, A, pay me. And I said, B, okay, I'll top off the story I did and you can have it. And they did it. So that's when people started to take notice. So, basically I'm sitting here saying, a day late, $1 short. No, years early, $1 short, being able to say, well, I told you so. And then I went on my I Told You So tour. Now, interestingly enough, when I would do Anderson Cooper on CNN, or when I would do various shows that were all of a sudden flocking to me,
sure,
it's sort of like once the cat's out of the bag, I'm the go-to guy, right? But when I'm in the trenches reporting it, nobody, everybody's at arm's length. They don't even want to talk to me. This happened with Scientology. This happened with Hollywood Interrupted, the book. Basically for calling out, Hollywood, on their bullshit. And what happened was that the media started getting a sore butt because basically my whole thing was I'm calling out the media at the same time. If I knew this, you knew this, wire services, the layers of protection went right through into mainstream media. And believe me, when I put my story together, I'm doing it on my own dime. I'm putting it up on my funky website, and I'm trying to get some traction on it. I had a major wire service tell me, oh, Ebner, we don't want to defame Mr. Cosby. And then, and I'll tell you, I've had enough of a career here in the States whereby if I go to news outlets, with a breaking story, they're going to take notice. This one, they didn't want to touch it, you know? And I was just like, wow. Wow, wow, wow.
Well, didn't it push you out of the game for other stuff? Because if you like stand out, there's a Chinese proverb that says the nail that sticks out furthest gets hit the hardest and the quickest, right? I mean, did it affect your income at all? Did you get like sidelined for other publications for other stories as a journalist?
You know, I don't think so. I think the only entity that ever got me fired from a job, in my recollection, was Scientology.
Okay.
You know, and they got me fired from Rolling Stone. Right. And, you know, I've never forgiven that outlet for that because they didn't back me on it. You know, if you're interested in what happened, I can tell you really quickly.
Yeah, sure.
I was doing a story about a kid who committed suicide at MIT. You know, Goodwill Hunting, blah, 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 the great technical school back east in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Sure.
He committed suicide on L. Ron Hubbard's birthday, March 13th. I learned that he was raised in Scientology. I also realized the kid was a fucking genius. He got into MIT at 14 years old.
Whoa.
This is how smart that kid was. You know, he developed one of the first ISPs, Earthlink. He wrote all the code and basically created Earthlink on his summer break from college.
Was he homeschooled then? Because if you grew up in Scientology, you kind of get through the age of like, is it 12 or 13? You either go to the Sea Org, or what happens then? Do you go to a regular school? How would he be clever enough to get into MIT at 14?
Well, because he was a rare case. He went to Scientology schools, you know, with all their bullshit. This kid was out logicking his parents probably by the time he was 6 years old. He was that smart. So school didn't really matter. The kid was just brilliant. His name was Philip Gale. Well, anyway, I went right to, it was fortuitous learning that this kid had thrown himself off not that he did this, but that he had killed himself on L. Ron Hubbard's birthday. And I called Rolling Stone. I said, I got to get on a plane to Boston and I got to do this story. And they said, go for it. So they were backing me in the beginning. I went there. The story what happened was that as I was filing my draft with Rolling Stone, I get an urgent email from my editor saying, Ebner, Scientology, you know, has sent us a package on you, and it's putting you with criminals, and they have photos of you. And I'm like, yeah, Scientology has been stalking me, you know, for the better part of I don't know how many, since 1998 when I did my undercover piece. Yeah. What was it? Spy Magazine. Do you want to buy a bridge story?
So there's a dossier on you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they had a dossier on me, and they said, we need you to respond to this. And I said, are you fucking kidding me? I have no response. You take my story as is, or you pay me for it right now. Well, they buckled to Scientology and their threats. They paid me my fee, my editorial fee, and I turned around and I got that syndicated in 7 other newspapers. So I was like, fuck you, Rolling Stone, you know, you pussies, you know, and that shit happens all the time. But that's also the blessing and the curse of being a freelancer. You know, it's sort of like, yeah, I'd like to continue writing for Rolling Stone, but you know what? I'm not going to take any of this bullshit. And you know, the idea that they sent them photos of me with criminals, known criminals, and I write about crime.
Yeah.
The fuck, you know? Get off my back.
Do you think the management must have changed at Rolling Stone by now, and the climate, the political climate, I guess. I'm sure they report on it all the time, and it's kind of just like talking about the weather or like whatever sports team like is winning this week, right?
Oh, well, yeah, but you know what? And you know, I don't want to sound I don't want to sound too resentful, but yeah, it's open season on Scientology in the media, and it has been for quite a few years.
What do you think the state of it is now? Because you've got Ron Miscavige has just left. Leah Remini kind of left, I think, last year.
Oh, yeah.
How many people do you think are left in Scientology? I mean...
very few. It paid membership throughout the world, I would say less than 30,000.
Would there not be some mass panic now by David Miscavige to kind of get as much money out of people as possible and just recruit everywhere and things like that? Not in celebrity circles, but...
I think he's reached his day of reckoning. I mean, his own father left and just wrote a book about him called Ruthless, about how his father, Ron Miscavige, who was a loyal musician in Scientology, and he
played at Tom Cruise's birthday and stuff, and he wrote music for the Scientology events and things. Yeah,
exactly. When your own father's coming after you, it's it might be time to cash it all in, or just disappear. But instead, he keeps developing real estate. He has all these things they call ideal orgs, and this is how they pump what's left of their constituency up, is like, oh, we're building new churches and doing all this, but there's nobody there. There's no membership to fill them.
Mark Headley mentioned that they kind of put on those kind of like events, and they tell you where there's this many people joining, so many people are going clear. We'll have the planet cleared by 20 whatever, right? And it's all bullshit.
It's all lies. Yeah, it's all bullshit. And at the end of the day, the only reason why they can sustain that cult is because they are real estate rich. They have properties, East Grinstead, where you are.
I was chased out of there. I pulled in there. I was lost in a car. Huh? Yeah, I drove in through the front gates because I was lost. I did a turnaround and I didn't know what it was. And then all these people kind of surrounded the car going, "What are you doing here?" And were like cross-questioning me. I was asking for directions, honestly, innocently. And we pulled out of there, and I got followed because I saw what it was when I left, and I was followed like by a black SUV type car until I pulled into a cafe 5 miles down the road. So that was my first like foot in the door kind of recently of Scientology. Very scary, but also exciting.
It is. And, they never, listen, they've had private eyes following me around LA for years, and
we've got the photos, Mark.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, if anyone wants to, for all that tax-free money that they paid for investigators to follow me, if you ever want to see what they actually found, it's Gawker Media, Gawker.com. I gave them the files because when one of the executives left, Marty Rathbun left Scientology, in the middle of the night, I caught an email from a Hushmail account, and he sent me the files. And I was like, this is all they got? Jesus, this is bad, So anyway, it's like, they can't win with me is what I'm saying. And certainly not, I mean, let's face it, the last celebrity standing of any real note is Tom Cruise right now. And, because of his relationship and his bond with David Miscavige and the idea that he's the anointed one, Tom Cruise, well, it's going to be, I don't expect him to leave leave Scientology anytime soon. And frankly, I relish the idea of watching him go down with the ship.
But Willie, my question is I have asked this of Tony as well and Mark. I always ask people who know about this stuff, their opinion on all this stuff about human rights abuses at Gold Base or like Clearwater, Florida and things. And they trick out Tom Cruise's SUVs and build him a lovely hang with all the Top Gun iconography and things. At this point, Tom Cruise, has access to television and the internet. He gets told things, I'm sure, or hears them at least. Is David Miscavige shielding him from this, or is he aware of what's happening? I know he has a different version of Scientology that someone in the Sea Org would.
Yeah, well, I can explain that, I think.
Does he know he's part of a cult, and does he know he's part of this money-grabbing, I guess evil is the best way to describe it, like ruiner of lives, like breaker up of families and stuff? He must know that, surely.
Well, yes and no, because, they have a way of validating all their actions, for the greater good, for, blah, blah, blah. We're going to clear the planet. You got to understand that mind control as practiced by the cult of Scientology is not something to sniff at. It's not like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat here, imagining all these conspiracy theories.
Well, it's like the CIA with the MK Ultra program, isn't it? It's just like repetition.
It is. And we can't underestimate the power of mind control. And I will be the first and last to say it. Tom Cruise, John Travolta, Jenna Elfman and her dipshit husband, what's his name, that guy? He's a fucking idiot. That, Kirstie Alley, these people are so mind-controlled, and I hesitate to use the word brainwash, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They're so mind-controlled that they don't know black from white.
Yeah.
And they'll, they accept anything that's told to them. And, the media is the enemy, and we're all suppressive persons, anyone who dares criticize it. And, fortunately, people like Leah Remini, had the presence of mind, or they had the attitude, that helped get them out. And that was...
Well, she spoke to David Miscavige at Tom Cruise's, was it birthday party or something? Or
I know it was the wedding.
With Katie, of course. And she went to speak to the dear leader, and she got scolded for it, didn't she? And she was like, well, fuck this guy, I'm leaving.
Sure, exactly.
She's got fire in the belly.
Exactly. So, we could go on all day about Scientology, but, the fact is that it's a blessing and a curse that I became the go-to guy. I'm glad. I am so happy that Tony Ortega, a guest on your show,
great guy.
Is, he really picked up the mantle, and he's carrying the torch, and I can sit back and think about other things, because I think, now that journalism, as we started at the top, it seems to be, shattering to pieces. I've found that the true crime genre is really what's suiting me now. And instead of trying to find an outlet for long form journalism anyplace where I can make a decent living, I just go extra long, and I turn, a 10,000 word think piece into 200,000 words, and you got a book.
Sure.
So hopefully.
I've got a question for you, actually, Mark. A couple of years ago on Hollywood Boulevard, there's a hotel. It's a famed, strange hotel. Loads of weird things have happened in it. A girl was found in a water tank on the roof of the hotel. Do you remember this story?
Vaguely. Wow. Give me some more details if you can.
Well, I saw it on the internet a couple of weeks ago. It's been around for ages. A girl went missing, basically, who came to do to become a star, do acting and things. There's a video camera of her in a lift, acting very bizarre, almost talking to someone in the corridor outside the lift. And then the lift door kind of won't shut. Now, the timeline on the video has been messed with because it's obviously been condensed.
Okay.
But this girl went missing, basically. She was found on the roof of the hotel weeks later when the people in the hotel complained that the water tasted funny. And they found her decomposing body in the water tank on the roof. If you haven't heard of it, I'll send you the story after this.
Yeah, send me the story. I vaguely remember it. These kind of stories come up all the time, and I love them. I love missing porn star stories. I love, that's where I live, and I'm not saying that this woman was a porn star, I'm saying sometimes people want to forget these people, and, I'm like, no, I think I want to look a little deeper, so that sounds good, man.
Yeah, no, she was found in the tank, and it was locked from the outside and stuff, and there was no way she'd get on the roof because only a certain person has the keys, but I think they were away that week, so it couldn't be them and things. What's the attraction of all this Hollywood sleaze to you, Mark?
I think, part of it is, listen, I don't think I've led I will never claim that personally I've led the most exemplary life,
No one has.
Look, listen, I've already disclosed this time and time again. Listen, I'm an ex-junkie, I've done a lot of shit and hurt a lot of people in my life. And, a lot of that stuff, you try and, make right with the world and with people, but you're never going to do it perfectly. So the thing is that, I have to admit that, writing about sleaze bags makes me feel a hell of a lot better about myself, That's the personal gain, I think, from it. But also, let's be realistic. What's left for me? God forbid I have to ever sit down again and try and pull a useless quote out of some starlet's mouth for a celebrity interview. It just doesn't do it for me anymore. But crime is really interesting. First of all, the professors from my liberal arts college back in New York, they think of me, and I know this because I have inside channels, as, a cheap true crime writer. And I'm like, fuck you. What am I going to do? I didn't want to be a romantic poet.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be an art history major. I wanted to come to LA and make a living. And I found that Hollywood and crime and the nexus thereof is a fertile ground for my kind of reporting. And I'm really good at it. Hence, what happens is that I found myself hitting a sweet spot right now. Because what's happening, I don't know if it's so much over there, but in the States, I got my demographic locked in. It's baby boomers. It's me. You see what I mean? I'm speaking to people that, 30, 40 years ago would have 3 channels on the television and they'd want to watch soap operas. The new soap opera are true crime shows. So when I create some intellectual property, I'm sitting there in my mind thinking, how can we get this into other media? I'm a late bloomer. I just got married less than 2 years ago. My wife's a fucking supermodel, but that's a whole other story. Let's put it this way. It was worth the wait with my wife, but at the same time, I'm sitting there, thinking, oh man, I create all this intellectual property. I've got good agents now. I'm like, get busy. Let's make movies. Yeah. You know what I mean? And, I've had a small success. But I always feel that the jackpot is right around the corner. So I don't sweat it. You know what I mean? Reaching. Not only that, but I can write till I fucking croak. I can write till I keel over. So, my point is that, life is good and true crime really is the sweet spot for me.
Are you in New York originally then?
No, actually born and raised in Rhode Island, and coincidentally, I'm working on a mob book called The Boys from Providence right now. I've been working on it for 2 years, and I hope to get that story out. It's a great heist story. So, who said, you can't go home again? I sure can. I went back to Rhode Island and got a book deal out of a story that's been in my mind for years, So, I'm from the East Coast. I came out here, almost 30 years ago.
That's why I asked, because I think as well, somebody in the kind of like the East Coast area, when you come to LA, when I came to LA and lived there for a while, I found everyone not difficult to get on with, but I always got the sense when you're talking to someone in LA, they're kind of like looking past you, but they're still being nice to you in case you're connected to someone that can either help them, get them a job, or get them fired. So you've got this like veneer between you two. It's very hard to make, I guess, contact. I guess in New York and London, all the people I got on with were like from the East Coast area. So I found it kind of. Sure. How long did it take you to adjust to the LA kind of type of personality?
Well, when I first came here, I had dreams of being a screenwriter. I wrote about 6 screenplays. They didn't go anywhere. It was torture every time I tried to write one. I said, this isn't for me. What happened was that, I had my ear to the ground in Hollywood, and by virtue of my geography, I was able to, tweak New York media outlets, specifically Spy Magazine, as being the guy who's looking at the Hollywood industry. So I've had, and there were, and I'll tell you, in the 80s and 90s, there was no shortage of, the glossy slicks, as you guys were coming out with the laddie magazines, and I think I've written for all of them, Maxim, Arena, FHM, blah, blah, blah. Those were great days. Those were the salad days for me. Because I'm going all around the world on stories. You mentioned David Carradine. I'm off to Bangkok.
Yeah, I was going to come to that. Everyone knows David Carradine, obviously the star of Kill Bill and Kung Fu in the 70s. He died mysteriously, Michael Hutchence style, autoerotically asphyxiated by hanging up and was found in a wardrobe. Can you shed some light just quickly? What happened with David Carradine? Because you uncovered more to the story, really, didn't you?
Well, yeah, here's the thing. David Carradine turns up dead in a hotel room in Bangkok. I'm like, I'm on it. I called Maxim Magazine. I said, I got to go. I was on a flight to Bangkok within 48 hours. I get out, have you been to Bangkok?
I've been to, I stayed in Bangkok once to fly to Chiang Mai in Thailand. But I know the area. Right. I've been to Pai and Chiang Mai and stuff.
So I get in my taxi cab, and first thing I noticed was as soon as we hit town, city central there, there's a tap on my cabbie's window, and it's a cop, and I'm like, what the fuck am I gonna get arrested right this early
again?
And that's how I feel whenever I'm reporting internationally, because a lot of countries, they just don't like Americans. Argentina being one of them, where I did a major drug story. I was like scared shitless.
I've been strip searched in Tel Aviv.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I was shooting a commercial in Tel Aviv 2 years ago, and I got dragged out of the queue and taken into a room and strip searched, literally, because I was English and they don't like English or American people. Well, justifiably, I guess. But I thought, that's it. They're going to throw me in jail. No one's going to know who I am. No one's going. It's going to take months to get this sorted out with an embassy. I'm dead. It was going to be like Midnight Express. Luckily, I was fine.
I'm telling you, it's exciting and frightening at the same time. But anyway, there's a cop tapping on his window. So he reaches up into his visor, pulls out 100 baht or whatever, and hands it to the cop. And he looks at me and he goes, "It's Thursday." Yeah. And I go, "I get it." Okay. So I realize I'm entering a real den of corruption. I go to the 5-star hotel that
Carradine.
Carradine was, expired in. And I go in there and I get a room. Same floor, same rate, 5-star Sofitel, really nice place, the Nylert Park Hotel. First thing I notice is they've disappeared the room that he died in. And I'm talking literally. This is spooky shit. They just walled it off. That room, and maybe it's a sort of a Buddhist tradition or something like that. When somebody dies, you want to cover it up. But they covered it up. Yeah. The room did not exist. So I couldn't go in there and look at it. But fortunately, I'm right next door. So, from what I had seen, they had said that he did the autoerotic asphyxiation, which, by the way, I had already confirmed with his ex-wife that that's something he enjoyed. So I'm not saying that that's not how he went.
Can you just clarify to anyone listening what that is? Is it strangulation, or is it attaching a wire to your genitals and your neck? How does it work? What was the...
Well, basically, the root of it is something I used to do in high school, where you hold your breath until you pass out, and get a little buzz out of that. I mean, listen, I'd try anything back in the day. But this is the idea is that if you do that while you are masturbating or having sexual intercourse with your partner, you choke somebody out, it's supposed to heighten the orgasm, But to me, that's just like you're just getting dizzy. I'd rather be a little bit more present for that kind of thing. But whatever.
Coke if you have to
each his own. To each his own. Anyway, in that hotel room, I realized that as nice as it was, I'm 5'6". I'm a short guy. I could not stand up in the closet. He's like 6'5", 6. That guy couldn't even fit in the closet that they said he was dead in. Okay, and where the rope was on the bar that goes across the closet where you hang your clothes.
Yeah,
I could pull that off with 2 fingers and snap it. It was cheap aluminum, so there's no way that that could sustain his weight to choke him out. I concluded right then and there, just by the idea that that was a staged photo.
Right.
That no, he didn't. But on the other hand, I did know that he did like to do rope tricks, and essentially the way he did it was he worked an elaborate pulley system with knots and ropes where part of it would be attached to his genitalia.
Right.
The other part would be around his neck. And the third part is he operated a pulley system whereby if you went one direction with the pulley, you were going to be castrating yourself. And the other way, you're choking yourself out. However it worked, it was a marvel of technology. And so he was deep into that shit. But at the same time, long story short, cut to the end of my adventure. I had interviewed cops. I got myself a translator. I had interviewed the hotel manager. The hotel manoger. I went out and literally went out into the what's the
red light district?
Soy Cowboy district. I went out to the red light district and I found a girl and I said, "Look, how much would it cost for you to come back to my hotel and choke me out?" I mean, basically, I'm saying I want to be choked. And I just wanted to find out if he had gotten some help and was it possible. And it was like 100 US would have gotten me all night,
yeah.
In there. So that said, the way I came to the conclusion that he had gotten help was my last day in the hotel. And by the way, one thing I wanted from the cops and the manager of that hotel was a videotape. I wanted to see who was coming in and out of David Carradine's room on the night of his death. Nobody would come up with that videotape for me. And that's where, you know, I was like, something went down here, and there's a cover up. I hear a knock. It's on my door. 5-star hotel, supposed to have security. Who's knocking on my door? They're saying room service. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How did somebody even get to my door at this hotel? Pretty damn easily. I open the door. It's a fucking reporter for the Bangkok Post, you know, which is the English language tabloid down there. And I'm like, hey, what's up, colleague? You know, come on in. And he goes, yeah, we heard you were in town. I'm like, great, cool. I guess, you know, word spread. I'm about to catch a flight back to the U.S. I wrap this up. And he goes, well, I got the morgue photos of Carradine in the morgue, you know. And I'm like,
That's him right now.
Honey, can you take care of that, please? Thank you. Sorry, someone's at the door.
Okay.
So anyway, I get
it's the reporter.
Hey, before we sign off, I'm gonna bring my wife into focus so you can validate that she's is indeed a rock star and a supermodel. But to finish the story, what ultimately happened was that he showed me these photos, and I got to tell you, the ligature marks on Carradine's neck.
Yeah.
It wasn't like just a red mark. He was almost decapitated. That rope went all the way. Honey, come say hello to Ethan, will you? Okay. This is Michelle Scott, former member of Anonymous.
Hello.
Saying hello. She got a Pikachu shirt on.
Hello from England.
How did I do?
Very good. 10. What are you doing with him?
Get out of here.
I'm just kidding.
All right. So anyway, long story short is I'm like, he had to have help, you know, because you don't inflict that kind of, you don't almost take your head off doing rope tricks, you know, in a little autoerotic sex magic thing.
He's quite a tall, big dude, isn't he, as well? He's over 6'4", 3 something. So
exactly.
Yeah.
But my conclusion, based on that video evidence, not video, photographic evidence, not even Maxim would dare publish the morgue photos. But with my visual confirmation of that, I was convinced that he had help. So I speak to the coroner. And by the way, let me tell you something else. In Bangkok, it's really interesting. You don't have like coroners with their vans running around to pick up bodies.
Right.
They use and I love this. This makes the story dark. It's like they use what are known as body snatchers. In other words, it's a freelance game to pick up the dead people.
That sounds like something like Burke and Hare or from Jack the Ripper from the London in the 1700s.
It's still going on in Thailand, and what they do is anybody with a flatbed, you know, and a CB radio is running around town. They basically race to the scene, and they bring the body to the morgue, and they collect a fee. Well, anyway, can you imagine this? Some freelance cowboy, you know, running around, shows up at the crime scene, walks into the hotel room, and is like, whoa, it's the fucking Kung Fu guy. Now they're taking pictures. Hey, there's a Rolex watch. Oh, what's in here? There's this per diem.
Yeah.
You know, and they trampled all over the crime scene. You know, and this is what I got. I confirmed it with the head coroner, who didn't investigate it. She was out of the country at the time, but she came back, and it was like, what is this shit? This crime scene, it has been poisoned.
Yeah.
You know, and so hence we'll never know. So it's still a whodunit in my mind.
Has the family not tried to reopen the case? Like, is it Keith, his brother, or someone?
I got a call from one of his brothers, John, the geeky one.
Yeah.
You know, there's Keith, one of my favorite of all-time actors, Keith Carradine. I didn't speak to him, but John reached out to me, and he goes, what happened to my brother? And I said, I can only tell you, I can't tell you for sure. You know, I wish I had locked this up, but really what I can tell you, John, is that I think he was murdered. And that's based on what I witnessed. And I said, listen, if you would like, I have org photos. I will send them to you. I would never just, you know, send them to you blind.
They're all over Google now, sadly.
Yeah, if you want to see these, I'll send them to you. And he goes, yes, I do. And I emailed him the morgue photos, and surprise, never heard from him again. And I don't blame him. You know what I mean? He must have been absolutely shocked to see his brother, you know. in that, in that kind of situation. And I can tell you, he did not die by hanging in the closet, physically impossible. And I just, even though his proclivity was for the kinky stuff, like autoerotic asphyxiation, at the end of the day, the kind of damage that was done to him is, I can't imagine someone being able to do that without help. Yeah. Wow. So, I think it's going to be one of the great mysteries of all time.
There could be a movie in it, Mark.
And by the way, speaking of movies, I just saw a friend of mine, Josh Olson, screenwriter here in L.A.
Yeah.
He wrote History of Violence, and good guy. He has a movie night I went to. The last movie we saw, I hope you are good at this because for some reason I can't remember the title, but plays a transvestite who adopts a baby, and there's a scene in it where he's breastfeeding the baby.
Who's in it?
And it is like the crazy David Carradine, another great character actor, one of the guys from Bonnie and Clyde. He was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. God, why am I?
No.
Huh?
Is it Sonny Boy? It's Brad Dourif. Yes. Yeah. I've just found it.
Brilliant. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh my God!
I'll look it up.
Right, well, yeah, look it up. Watch it. It is the sickest thing I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of sick shit in my life. David Carradine as a transvestite breastfeeding an infant. That's the only way to pitch that movie to you. I hope you know.
Well, Mark, I'm going to let you go. There's 2 more stories I wanted to cover, but we can do another time.
We'll do it again.
Yeah, no, totally.
Absolutely. This has been great.
I've had a great time.
So anyway, what do I have? I got books out. I got Hollywood Interrupted.
Well, just to wrap up, where's the Hello Fiend book, the Bill Cosby autobiography that you keep being kind of sidelined? You were going to start in January, was it, this year, and it hasn't happened, or?
Well, no,
who's stopping
you? I wanted to do the book. My agent went to, I believe, 40 publishers. Everybody declined. The notes I would get back from publishers were, wow, Ebner seems slightly off the rails and a bit prosecutorial. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I may seem off the rails. I'll accept that. Prosecutorial? He's about to be fucking prosecuting. Of course I'm being prosecutorially. What the fuck? You know what I mean? It's sort of like, and my promise to any publisher, and this is, speaking to anyone in the publishing that may be watching this, is if I have to, right now, the tally of women, the accusers on Bill Cosby, it's up over 60. If I have to put that book together, I will interview all 60 of them. I will do this. But the fact is, traditional publishing doesn't want any of it. And,
maybe you need to be on the other side of the trial and see how it goes, and then people will kind of rally support for it when there's nothing, I guess, to lose. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. You know what? It's one of those things. I am convinced that what will happen is he'll go through this criminal trial in Pennsylvania. Whatever happens will happen. Some hack will come out with a book. Basically it'll be open season on Cosby, and somehow I missed the boat by being ahead of the story. Isn't that ironic? It happens all the time. You know what? And it's my cross to bear.
And what a way to finish. Mark Ebner, thank you so much, sir. I do hope we can do this again. I get a kick out of all your interviews and all your work. People can find you basically at HollywoodInterrupted.com. Is that correct? All your stories that you update?
And they can email me directly at markebner59@gmail.com.
And you're on Twitter, right?
I'm on Twitter, markebner59. I'm easy to find. Don't waste my time, but and that's not to you, but a lot of times is we talk about conspiracy theories and all that. I'm a fucking bullshit magnet. You know what I mean? I get those people. And they bug the shit out of me with their little conspiracies. I'm just come with something hard and I'll see it through, but don't waste my time.
And on that bombshell, we thank Mark so much. Mark, thank you so much, dude. It's been great. I've had a great time.
Stay in touch.
Have a great day. Bye. Over and out.